I wanted to talk to you today about something that's becoming a bit more common in local government, and especially around digital strategies, and that is that they're becoming very, very generalised, using lots of kind of buzzwords and information without actually giving any real detail. So I'm going to talk to you today just really about why generalisations kill clarity. So for me, this is taken from a book that I read. It's one of my favourite books. It's called The Road Less Stupid. It's written by Keith Cunningham, and it's a very good business book that you can adopt and take the lessons from into various other means. But in that book, he talks about the primary reason most goals are never achieved is because they're generalised statements of hope. And obviously you can read the rest of the quote there. And that's what we're seeing constantly within digital strategies. It is those buzzwords, the agile, the cloud, the hybrid, the Internet of Things, all those words that mean something within the terms of IT, but don't really mean anything in the terms of a good strategy. And by that, we mean that the strategy is how you're going to overcome obstacles. So what we're seeing in a lot of cases is that hasn't been enough work done to identify what those obstacles are that you're actually trying to overcome to be able to deliver that strategy. And that's why we're getting these very generalized digital strategies that talk at a very high level. So you'll probably notice that many today have this list of buzzwords. Within them, you'll find them in most local government strategies these days. And the top line, through our ICT strategy, we will better utilise technology to improve services to our customers, is a direct lift from a particular strategy that I've been looking at. And if you actually break down that sentence, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't tell you what we're going to do. It doesn't tell you what we're going to deliver. It just says we're going to try and do something a bit better. And then we throw these buzzwords in. We talk about Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. I always put bonus points for digital skills because there's a big section on that, without necessarily people understanding what they mean by digital skills or what that is, because it covers such a broad range of topics. So returning to Keith's book, he actually talks in the book about Southwest Airlines and the fact that they had a very, very simple strategy. In fact, it's a one-liner. A plane on the ground makes no money. Therefore, as a business, everything they did and everything they worked towards was about how do we get that plane back in the air as quickly as possible. And that takes on various guises through the different teams that work within that. But it's such a simple thing that you can then align the rest of your strategies to. So that's the business strategy. Your IT strategy would then sit, or your digital strategy would then sit underneath that. And so what does that really mean? So we know within the airline industry, we've got passengers, we've got customers. They're going to be a huge factor in how quick a plane can take off again. Alongside that, we're going to have a flight crew, obviously the ones who fly the plane sit up front. Many requirements that they have to go through before a plane can leave. You've got the cabin crew responsible for safety on board and everything else that goes on inside the plane during the flight. You've got the ground crew, obviously dispatching the planes, getting people through. There's ticketing, there's check-in desks, there's all sorts of roles within that. And obviously your bags need to get on board the plane at some point as well. So you're really looking at what is it in each of those teams and departments that's kind of stopping that plane or slowing the plane down from getting itself airborne again as quickly as possible. And if you can start to identify each of those problems, then actually coming forwards with some digital technology solutions becomes much simpler. And this is ultimately where lots of local government plans go wrong, is because they're not focusing on the actual departments and the problems within each of the departments. They're putting these generalised sweeping statements out across the board of what they want to achieve. So if we now think a bit logically, what we can do is just take one of those teams. So in this case, we'll just take cabin crew, and we can sit down and we can work through a methodology with them that you'll have heard me possibly talk about before. So the first thing is to talk to them, find out the problems that they have, what slows them down, what tasks they have to undertake that may be very manual, laborious, take too long, and actually have those conversations, uncover what that is, and probably clarify some of the issues that they've had that you've not come across. From there, you can start to discover solutions. You can find out, okay, we can match the things we found during those conversations with solutions we believe will help them to speed up processes or to remove processes, to automate process, to get rid of some of these things that are taking too long. And don't forget, this is all aligned back to that strategy of a plane on the ground makes no money. So once we've discussed the problems, the issues, clarified those, we've now got the knowledge that we've discovered, what's out there, what's available. We can actually then start to decide on what that digital strategy needs to look like. And then obviously we would repeat this with the flight crew, we'd repeat it with the ground crew, with the baggage, and we'd go through the whole process again with the passengers and the customers as well. And each time we're looking at it and we're trying to decide what the problems are and what we're trying to solve, we're constantly going back to the business strategy. And again, that's where these digital local government strategies aren't doing enough to say, okay, not just what is the council's corporate plan, but actually what are each individual department trying to achieve? What's social care trying to achieve over the next 5 years? What targets and ambitions do they have? You can almost treat each department as an individual business and go in and look at those and actually go in and say, okay, housing need to achieve X over the next few years. What technology can we provide housing that's going to help them achieve that? And if you do it in that way, it just becomes a much, much simpler process to get a good strategy in place that everyone can buy into. And it's not just a 20-page document full of buzzwords that's actually quite meaningless to most people. As I say here, if you don't refer back to that business strategy, then the digital strategy won't make sense. It sits as a standalone document, and I'll briefly mention it in the very last slide as to why that's so critical. So then what does your digital strategy really look like? So instead of having it broken down by cloud first or hybrid approach or agile working or Internet of Things, break it down by the various departments. So we know which they are in this example. We're going passengers, flight crew, cabin crew. We've got all of those departments. We've seen what they want to achieve. We know their outcomes. We know where they want to get. So we've been able to establish through having conversations with them and discussions what those problems are. From there, we've been able to come up with some solutions for each one. And all of that feeds into what will then become your digital strategy. And therefore, you've got quite a nice flow going from the department that you're working with, where they want to get to, what they want to achieve, what is stopping them from achieving that, and therefore what we can put in place to kind of bridge that gap. So it's where are they today, where do they want to be, what's holding them back, what can we do from a IT technology perspective to get them there, and that's where your digital strategy goes. So as a document, obviously what we're then going to have is we're going to have reference to that business strategy. The plane on the ground makes no money. We're going to have relay everything back to that. Within that, we then have each of the departments and the issues they have in stopping that business strategy from happening. Then we have the solutions, which are the bridge between where they are, where they want to get to. So how are we going to implement technology that help us get the planes back in the air as quickly as possible? And then under that, we're going to have a series of guiding principles, which you can kind of describe as the barrier on the side of the road that stops you falling off the road. So it gives you some idea of where you're going with things. So if we drop the aviation side and we start saying, okay, well, that's a local government strategy. What does that look like? In a similar vein, we have the corporate plan plus the departmental plans sitting across the top. You've then got the same sort of breakdown. You've got customers and then you've got internal departments. they're all having problems that are stopping them from achieving that plan. We can come up with some solutions that will help bridge the gap between the two. It might not do everything, but it will help maybe accelerate them on that journey to where they want to be. And again, we'll have a series of guiding principles that within IT we will work towards to make sure it's all joined up and we've got a sensible approach to where we're going. At which point you can kind of come back to those buzzwords. So some of the buzzwords will become your guiding principles. And that's kind of the key difference in a lot of, or the difference between a poor strategy and a good strategy is in many strategies, these are seen as the strategy, but they're not. These are the guiding principles that help guide the strategy. The strategy is about how you're delivering the final outcome that you want to get to. So you might have some of these in, and that's perfectly fine. Just make sure they're in as principles that you're working towards or looking at to help you deliver that end goal. So as a business, I generally start with 3 principles, which neatly acronymize into ICE. So that's integrated. So we want to be looking at where we can integrate systems if we have to, and at the right level. So it doesn't have to be a full integration. It might just need to ping a message from one to the other. It might just have to be an alert. It might be a deep integration, but those conversations, we have them up front. Cloud first. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of cloud software as a service. For me, that's kind of the critical thing that we look at, but it doesn't mean everything has to be cloud. Not everything will work well in the cloud. So cloud first, yes, but be open to the other ideas. And then ecosystem is kind of thinking about the wider set of tools that come with it. So again, Salesforce is a great example that I often use in this area. If you go on the Salesforce App Exchange, you'll find hundreds and hundreds of tools designed to work with Salesforce. And again, think about how that operates as that integrated cloud ecosystem, combining all 3 and what that means for you as a business. And obviously we can add other principles as we start to work with each department or each area within the council, and we can add more, we can take them away. So this is kind of just a Kickstarter for 5. So within my methodology then, we've gone through the first 3 stages of that. We've discussed the problems, we've chatted them through, we've found out what the blockers are between where the department needs to be and where they are today. We've discovered some of those solutions. Might be that we needed better data, more data, the quality needed to be better. It might be new technologies, it might be artificial intelligence, it might be machine learning. We can start to pull that together into a strategy. And again, as we said, that you've got the business strategy, the problems, the solutions, the guiding principles. What I would then do from there is my next 2 steps, design. So, okay, what does that look like as a 1-year plan? Because there might be prerequisites that you have to do first. There might be infrastructure projects that you need to put together. There might be some bigger changes that you need to do, and we need to align it, we need to resource it. So we need to set out what that looks like just as a 1-year plan. And then obviously we're going away and deliver the projects that we need to do to make a big success of this. But obviously I'm not going to go into huge detail on those 2 stages during this conversation. And then really, the slide I wanted to come back to was one of the reasons why we do this is because the business cases within digital are often quite difficult to write. And I've seen many people struggle with them. I've seen people say we shouldn't have them at all. And I think that comes down to the fact it is quite complex and difficult to do. And actually, if you've got a very generic kind of buzzword strategy, it is going to be hard to do because there's no natural flow between what you're trying to achieve and what the outcome is going to be within that. So having a business case that says we're going to buy this system because it's cloud possibly might be more expensive than the system you're replacing. It might not be as good as the system you're replacing. It might solve a different problem. There's all sorts of issues that you're going to come across with writing a business case in that scenario. Whereas actually, if we can write a business case that says, we know as a department, we've had these conversations, we know what we've found, we think it's going to achieve this, that obviously then just writes itself. It's a natural flow through from that kind of corporate plan or the business strategy through to the problem, through to the solution, through to this is the business case that's going to help us solve that. And that's really why I call it the XYZ business case, because we know the department or the business wants to achieve something, which is X. We know that. We've seen the business strategy. We've seen the corporate plan. The current problem stopping them, this is why. We know that because we've had the discussions with them. We've chatted through. We know what they want to achieve. We know what's stopping them from achieving it. We know what blockers there are. We know what's taking them too long, what manual tasks there are. And therefore, we as IT, we believe the solution to bridge the gap is therefore Z. And it's a very straightforward thing, but it's a natural flow through from that business case, from the digital strategy to the business strategy. And it kind of makes sense. And then the only other bit you really need to add into it is that the cost of doing this is A, and the benefit is going to be B, which can be both financial and non-financial benefits that come from it. So that's kind of just an added benefit that you get from having spent the time to do the strategy right in the first place. Don't just write a strategy as IT saying, these are all the nice things we're going to look at and the things we think we're going to do. Actually embed yourselves in the departments, take some time to speak to them, talk to staff, find out where the problems are, what's hampering them, and then you can start to build a really good strategy off the back of that. And obviously, here's my details. If you want more information, you want to contact me, ask me any questions, please do ping me an email or drop me a note on LinkedIn. I'm always around, generally available, but more than happy to talk people through this. So thank you very much for listening.